don't know if we'll get through it all, but some of it should be quick. Yeah, so I put this out first on the agenda. It's okay, just a MVP check-in, release check-in. We're getting pretty close there, so I just wanted to run through it quickly, see where we are. From the multi-cluster gateway controller side, we're looking in reasonable shape. I think we've got a lot of testing and hardening to do, but as far as actually getting code complete, as it were, we're probably not too far away. A lot of work being done on docs at the moment. Big feature just merged with Google DNS support, so looking good on that side. So then I had a chat with Alex earlier, and I think it's looking like auth policy v2 might push out a bit. There's a bit of work to do there. So I guess, is there anything else on people's minds that's sort of outstanding work at this point that are like, oh, that needs to get in? I heard like a really low sound. I'm not sure even who it was.
Can you hear me?
You're very I don't know if it's just me, but it might be my connection maybe.
Is that anybody else?
It's me. I just got a warning that my internet connection is slow.
Well, you're okay, but you're somewhat quieter than everybody else, I think. But now it was okay the last time you spoke. So.
If I just raise my voice slightly, maybe. So yeah, there's also the DNS health check stuff is still in process, although it's looking very close to merging now, I think.
So when the sprint for us is next week, next Wednesday. How you feel about closing it out for that point?
I think that should be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We also have the docs PR updating the PR updating the docs for written policy v2, Craig. Okay. But it should be ready. Just some Penny reviews that. And okay, so in a minute, I can give also some more insights on auth policy v2 and whether we can make it or not.
Okay. Okay, so that's probably everything for this status check. I'll keep this item around just as we're moving towards the MVP, just so we can track items, or if anybody's got anything that's like, oh, I saw this really important bug, or shout in Slack, bring it here. If you've got an item that you feel needs to be done, raise it as quickly as possible, because we're getting pretty close now, I think. A lot of focus is going to be on the website, I think, as well over the next week or two. And there's one action, which is to scope out what's left for policy v2, which is probably what you're going to lead into, Guy. So we can probably leave that item there and move on. Is it this one, the multi-version auth config, or is it something else? This one?
Yeah, this one and the next one, both of them actually.
Okay, right, go for it.
You're not sharing your screen, Craig, so people may not.
Sorry, let me do that.
That's all right. Anyway, the first item that Craig mentioned is about multi-version of the auth config CRD. So unlike what we did for the written policy v2, for the auth config, we decided to keep both versions, right? Meaning the existing one and the one that will be the basis for auth policy v2. And the reason for that is that because we are aware of some other teams that have been playing and without Reno lately, including the OpenShift AI team, for which they have been building already some auth configs based on the current version of the API. So we do not want to break those versions, even though they are not in production with those yet. But at least try to make it right and provide a clear migration path from one version to the other. And it turns out it's not too hard to achieve that, provided you can implement and support a conversion webhook, which is what we did, right? So basically, in order to support multiple versions of a CRD, you need to implement a conversion webhook, right? And we did that. But it happens that Authorino is a bit of a special case compared to the other components, right? Because the Authorino service is a data plane service that also happens to be a Kubernetes custom controller, right? And it also defines its own Kubernetes custom resource definitions. But while the Authorino operator is yet another Kubernetes custom controller that defines yet another Kubernetes custom resource, right? But because we didn't want to have to support two different workflows for releasing the operator and the operand, we decided to pack everything related to custom resources and custom controllers in the Authorino operator, right? So all the manifests required to run Authorino as a custom controller are actually part of the Authorino operator bundle. And that kind of posed a question for us about where to host the webhooks or the conversion webhook, right? In one hand, the source code that is used to implement the conversion webhook is in Authorino, because it has to do with the auth config type, which is owned by Authorino. On the other hand, the conversion webhook is a single instance deployment, similar to the Authorino operator itself, right? Whereas Authorino can be multiple instances per cluster, right? And we don't need one conversion webhook per instance of Authorino. We only need one for the entire cluster. But anyway, this has been discussed already, and this topic is then the agenda today, mainly to report the decision we made for now, which is to make the Authorino operator the manager that deploys the conversion webhook, whilst the actual code base for the conversion webhook is in Authorino, right? So because every version of the Authorino operator maps to a fixed version of the operand, a fixed version of Authorino, we can deploy the webhook service based on that version. Anything you'd like to say, Craig?
Nope. Sorry. Did you hear?
No. I was picking up some noise. I thought it would.
Oh, sorry. I'll turn off my microphone.
No worries. So, so basically, this is what we decided, right? I had a first version where Authorino was deploying the conversion webhook, but this morning I moved according to the decision we made a few days ago of bringing that to the Authorino operator repo. So right now, when you install the Authorino operator, it also deploys one and only one instance of the conversion webhook, which is based on the Authorino image, the default Authorino image. And then once you request instance of Authorino by creating an Authorino CR, the operator deploys a corresponding instance of Authorino. But that conversion webhook service is that one instance will be the only one for the entire cluster, right? One thing to mention here is that this adds a new dependency of the operator on set manager, which we did not have, right? But for the conversion webhook, it has to be served. The requests have to be served through TLS. So we need a server certificate. And because usually in the Kubernetes operator realm, people usually rely on cert manager to do that. And that is also true for anything that we scaffold using operator SDK, which is the case of Authorino operator. So we decided to work with Cert Manager as well. So when you install Arduino operator, it will request those certificates for Cert Manager. So Cert Manager needs to be that installed in the cluster. That means we need to update all the user guides of Arduino. That starts with a run this kubectl apply to get the operator installed, and then you can request an install of Arduino with a previous step of installing the Cert Manager. That is one point that may deserve some further discussion some other time, because I bet that other components may also eventually require server certificates. So far, we've been only running demos with TLS disabled, as far as I'm concerned. But whenever we need, at least for the service protection services. But obviously, for production, we will need to provide, steps for enabling TLS. And I'm figuring that probably we're gonna use Cert Manager for that too, right? So we don't make the Arduino operator install it on its own, because we may also need it for other components. Let's just try to sync up and find the best way, to do that. Yeah, sure, Craig.
Just a question on that, Guy. So if I'm not using Cert Manager, but I can get a valid certificate, would it be reasonable for me to be able to configure the webhook with a certificate not created by Cert Manager? As in, if I had a secret, right, that had valid certificate that could be used.
It's feasible, but it would have to tweak a couple manifests when you install the operator, right? Because everything that you create with the operator SDK usually defaults to using Cert Manager. Okay. So we can remove those custom resources there. I mean, the issuer and the certificate one, right? And either delete them or, well, probably they will fail if you do not have Cert Manager, right? When you try to install it, will fail because it will not have such CRDs installed in your cluster.
Yeah.
So either it fails or it succeeds, and then later you delete those custom resources and replace them with your self-provided certificate. Okay.
So I'm just thinking about the impact on MVP there as well. So how is Cert Manager provisioned in your mind? Is that done like as a dependency in OLM? Is it done by somebody else? Or like, how is Cert Manager getting into the cluster?
I really don't know. Right now, the Arduino operator is not installing it.
Okay.
And so what I'm doing is only for the developer workflow, our tooling will install it, right? So we have it available. But that's what I meant with discussing with everybody a way to get it installed that serves for all the components. So I don't know. We could make it a dependence, such as just like we have on other stuff like Istio, right?
Yeah. Okay.
One question. So the Kubernetes requires the TLS certificate, or does OLM require the certificate?
Kubernetes requires it.
Okay. Because I'm currently looking at OLM doc because we've seen quite a few conversion webhooks. However, I have never installed actually Cert Manager in my life yet. So I think OLM does include these, can include the certificates on its own. So if I understand it correctly, so it's either we rely on OLM or Cert Manager.
Well, I would have to look into what OLM does because I don't know about that.
Yeah, I will send it to Slack because I currently can send it in chat.
What I do know is that the Kubernetes API server does require to be an HTTPS connection with the conversion webhook service.
Yeah, I will post it in the Kuadrant Slack the article I found on OLM and the conversion webhooks.
Yep, thanks. Well,
Yeah.
that does ring a bell because I was checking the bundle manifest for OLM, and it does look significantly different from what we have when we deploy manually by applying the manifest, right? So it does grab stuff related to the certificate, and it adds to the bundle manifest. I just don't know what it does with all that. So that is one pending point, for us to discuss and decide how we get Cert Manager installed, or some other way to support enabling TLS connection from Kubernetes API server and Authorino webhook service. And once we get that figured, then we're probably ready to move on with these two pull requests that effectively introduce alt-config v1 beta 2, right? One in the Authorino repo and another one in the Authorino operator repo. And that is the most important thing to move on with alt policy v2, right? So we need those Golang types defined in the Authorino repo, so we can upgrade them in the definition of the alt policy in the Kuadrant operator repo, right? So we can upgrade from v1 beta to alt-config v1 beta 1 to v1 beta 2, and finally add the route selectors. Once we do that, we have alt policy v2. We did not have to do anything special in Authorino to support v1 beta 2. It's only an API change, right? All the implementation remains the same, and that's another reason to have the conversion webhook, right? Because we did not modify anything, did not change anything in the implementation, and therefore the new version of the API maps one-to-one to the old one. We need the conversion webhook.
Okay.
And with that, I covered both the topics already, Craig.
Okay. So it seems like we need to figure out how to install Cert Manager into the Spoke clusters. We install it directly into the control plane or into the hub. I guess if it was there already, I think it would work fine too. I don't know if we've actually tested that, but I'm pretty sure it would work okay.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the options, right? Is like, hey, if you're using the quick start, I reckon we should install it, because that feels like too much to ask. Whereas if you're installing it into an existing cluster or an existing OCM setup, then the prerequisite is like, yeah, install Istio, install Cert Manager, or if you have them already installed, is there anything they need to do if it's already installed? Like, do they need to tell anything? Or
No.
Okay.
No, if Cert Manager is there, just apply the manifest and it's going to work.
Okay. Okay, that's nice and simple.
Yeah, one thing based on this discussion, I would probably recommend shipping the alt policy v2 later than in the MVP, because this seems to be another change how we install it, which, we install Cert Manager a certain way. Now maybe there are going to be some differences based on the OCM and if it needs to be a managed add-on or how it should be. I think this is a big change that we are basically finding out now. So probably my recommendation would be to just count alt policy v2 out for now and add it in the patch release or whatever.
It will probably be bigger than a patch release.
Or whatever, next release, whatever it is.
I'd like to hear like Alex and Guy's thoughts on that. My thoughts are that the two APIs, so the main reason for auth policy v2 being part of MVP is that it brings the two APIs in line and provides the same user experience for these two key APIs. And if we don't do that, we're potentially creating more problems for ourselves in the future, where we're going to have to convert all those auth policy v1 alpha 1s to auth policy v1 alpha 2 or whatever it's versioned.
Why? I mean, the conversion webhook is going to be there regardless.
Only for
Right?
auth
The
config.
migration path needs to be clear because we already have users. So I don't see the big of a deal.
It's a different it's a different user path. So the auth config is Auth resource. Auth policy is Kuadrant's resource, and they're two separate resources.
Yeah, but they are directly linked, and one contains the another. I can safely say that just looking what's changed, we need to restructure or redo a lot of our tests. And we haven't looked at it yet.
Sorry, you don't need to change the tests, actually, at least not now, Peter, because those versions are backwards compatible, right? Meaning that you can still apply a auth config CI based on v1 beta 1, and the conversion webhook will take care of storing the right version, right? So you don't need to change anything. The only thing that needs to change is making sure that when you install the alternate operator, the alternate webhook is up and running, right?
Right. I would counter that. Yes, we do, because we should test it how it is advertised, and it's not going to be advertised using the old way and relying on conversion webhook, meaning we kind of do.
No, it's a fair point, and I'm not trying to convince you that all policy needs to go in, right, for MVP. I'm fine if we decide to postpone that. I think it's okay. It would be nice, right, to have it for the reason that Craig mentioned. It's about the UX. Indeed, we are not introducing any new feature with it, so it's only about making those two kinds of policies, look more similar as possible. If I can mention just one thing that might be an issue in the future if we do not have auth policy v2 in, is the thing with the route selector, right? By not having the support for route selectors in auth policy v1, that will effectively lead users to rely on the conventional Auth when conditions to enforce conditional rules of the policies, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
okay,
once we open that door, dealing with that in the future might be an issue.
Right. Okay, that's a fair point. I agree. However, yeah, in that case, let's do it. However, we will definitely need more time. Right. We are literally just finding new things that will be there in week or two, and that we will first see as basically a CR release.
Yeah,
But
and it's not, from an engineering point of view, it's not very different either, Peter, because even though I only left 3 bullet points there, but merging those 2 PRs in the dependency services, then upgrading the auth policy CRD and adding what makes it different from view 1, which is the route selectors, those 3 bullet points, they're quite big ones, right?
Yeah.
It happens that the first one is quite advanced, so we are very close to getting that merged. Second one, it's not too big, but the third one can become quite big of a change, right? Because adding the route selectors means making sure that we reconcile them in the same manner we do for rating policy, right? And there is one thing that I'm not 100% certain about, which is the compatibility of the route selectors with the EC authorization policy, right? Right now, what we do is, because we have the WASP machine for rating policy, we can afford implementing whatever kind of conditional that we heard from the route selectors. Effectively, any kind of route matching rule that you inherit from the HP route, right? We can implement in the WASP machine. The same may not be true for the EC authorization policy, which is the way how we connect, altering the architecture, right? If that is the case, we would need to decide either to drop something from the HP route matching rules in the alt policy route selectors only because we cannot support that in the authorization policy, or to finally bring alt into the WASM shim. And who
Okay.
knows how long that's gonna take.
Okay.
Can I
So-
quickly interject here?
Yeah,
So-
but first, I want to apologize to David because he had his hands up.
I saw that and then it went away.
Yeah. Yep. But go ahead, Alex, if you want.
So my perspective on the both points that just have been raised. So having a working product, that's key. Or what you just said, the limitations that we could hit at the route selector, right? I think, and feel free to disagree with that, but I think we could iterate over that, right? This can be made, like this problem can be broken up, oh no, currently version MVP, whatever number that is, right, doesn't support that, but MVP.1 then would. MVP.2, like we discussed that, right? Like all the way to the wasn't shim, we all, unless somebody again in the meantime disagreed with that, we all considered like implementation detail where we could sort of sneak our way around that, right? So I guess, so that's for the former, for the latter, sorry. Now for the former, like, I guess it's a confidence level thing, right? So obviously I don't want to release an MVP that's completely broken, don't get me wrong. But if some things are broken and, we only find out because you could only upgrade your test case a little later down the game, and the week after that, even we redo a release, like, I don't think that's necessarily bad. Now, doing an MVP without auth policy and then doing another thing later, then my question is, what do we do with the MVP, right? If it's just a release, you label it and you're happy and you hit a milestone and nobody uses it, heck, be my guest. I don't care. But the whole point of, certainly from like, I was about to say the Kuadrant team, but the service protection, as like from the service protection angle of things, the whole point of this release is to bring like a good user experience. So obviously there is no good user experience to a broken product. I'll give you that. But so my perspective is I consider service protection .next release, whatever that is, MVP or not, to be the full-blown thing. I think we should stick to that. And when I say full-blown thing, what I mean is auth policy v2. Well, the policies v2, as I call them.
So
It was
basically-
a major item on the MVP doc, right? Like it was called out specifically that rate limit policy V2 and auth policy V2 were part of that.
Okay. In that case, if it's not ready in, I don't know, week or two, the MVP is gonna slip. And that is completely okay. That's what
Yeah, I
I
mean,
kind of understood from Alex, and that
Yeah, so on the
we want
timing
to
of the
include it,
MVP,
but we are not key on. We need to make sure it works first, and we have confidence. If it's not there by the time we expect to hit the release button, we will simply wait.
Mhm. So at the time, the timing of the MVP is something that we're dictating right now. We're not getting like people screaming at us like released last week. So
Yeah,
I feel like
that's fine.
there's still some flexibility there. We'll have to communicate it.
Oh, I'm completely fine
it's-
with relying. I just wasn't getting the vibe of. I just was getting the vibe of we will hit it. We have something by the date, and we will hit it then. If that's not the case, I'm only glad.
Another thing though would be to cut a release and cut an RC, right? Like if people want to play with MVP RC, it's just more QE people effectively for free, right?
Yeah, I think that's worth considering is just cutting a release at the end of this sprint anyway, and then we can do another one, right? That we actually call MVP or whatever. Like a release that's entirely in our control upstream. So creating a tag updating some docs to say this is what you need to install from, like running some tests and things like that. I mean, we want to do that anyway, so I think that's not a bad thing to do. We're just not making any kind of announcements as in going off to Gateway APIs SIG and going, hey, come try out our ready MVP policy thing, right?
Yeah.
And also, I think tagging it RC also sort of sets the expectations, right? So we think it works, and if we're correct, then you're very happy, like everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And if it's broken, nobody's really surprised neither.
Yeah, can be.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So the current decision then is that we will continue with our policy v2, and we will likely cut some form of release at the end of the sprint anyway to just mark the progress so far, be able to test a certain set of components at a certain version, find lots of bugs because there'll be plenty, and we'll do another release sometime afterwards. I think also that may, yeah, exactly, Dave. Sorry, Dave's saying good for exercising through a release as well, which is correct. So we'll do some planning around that, I think, and I think communicating that we're doing some kind of RC is also good to show progress. So I think that's also a reasonable thing. Guy, anything more on that?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank you.
excellent. Didi, I pulled this one in from the backlog. Do you want to talk about this one?
Okay, thanks, Greg. So just to let you know that we've been discussing this in the past week, I think. And most of the points, we reached some conclusions, of course. But this is about that we just figured out now that we start having pull requests coming from forks, and that those pull requests, they weren't generating images because of our branch protection. Those images, meaning they weren't pushing to key IO, which is our hosting. Very good reason, actually. We cannot actually let people to push images to our repository of images. That would be a huge security flaw. So actually comment that if we are okay that this is how it is, that only the pull requests coming the branches from Kuadrant are the ones that they will effectively generate those images, and they will be uploaded to KIO, and that we don't have that option for pull requests coming from any fork. If that's okay, there's no problem there. Then the other point would be that QE needed to have certain catalog, including particular SHA images, SHA tag images tagged by the SHA of the GitHub SHA commits, effectively. That those were kind of reflecting a point in time of the operators and their operands, from Kuadrant operator until Authorino operator, the Authorino service, and the same for limitador. So we encountered a couple of issues because of these limitations of our process, that we were only thinking about the pull requests coming from Kuadrant instead of the forks, that we resolved it in the end to have those catalogs generated when they were merged into main. At that point, it would be tagged by a SHA, or it is being discussed if it's replaced by another kind of tag that would be probably date-based or something in between. We don't know. So as I mentioned before, this is actually a work that's already in progress, so there's not much to make decisions here, but more like a point of awareness that, okay, these are the limitations that we have. We cannot actually let people to push to KIO if they're coming from forks. Members of Kuadrant team, they have the option of branch from Kuadrant, and they will have like the same permissions to push to key.io. And for the rest, this been doing by Adam and Greg, I believe. And pretty much that's it. I'm not sure if like any of the people that have been like Peter or Guy or Adam have been talking about this once you share something. If not, it's just that.
Yeah, I will just share a quick QE perspective. Like was said, we just need a stable set of images that we can test and they will change. So that's why we need something that's tagged with not defaulting tag. We are getting that, and we will be getting that with the weekly build. So completely fine by us. Yeah, that's basically the build we use. So anything else is only nice to have. I think that having only main building images only from merge pull request is totally fine. I believe that it does mean we cannot test PRs, but we are still not doing that. And if we want to do that, we will probably find another way, or we can generate the images only once. So yeah, everything good from QE, from the plan.
I just want to make sure I understood it, Didi. So if I create a PR from a fork, it gets reviewed and approved, then gets merged. That's when the image gets built, right?
Yes, but not before.
Not before. Okay. Does that impact on the CI/CD of that PR? As in, can we actually let the tests run in some form in order to prove out?
It would be, yes, like the rest of the pipeline is going to execute normally. The only problem is that you're not going to be uploading the images, which it might be a problem for example, OLM, that when the command line needs to validate the catalog, the images needs to be hosted somewhere, which is kind of like a limitation by OLM at the moment. So that might be an issue for some people.
So something that I've seen, and I'm not sure if it's what actually triggers the build of the images, but there is definitely some things done in like the Kubernetes community where obviously they get hundreds, if not thousands, of external contributors creating PRs that need to be tested. Is somebody who is an owner adds a flag which is okay to test. So that means it's been reviewed, and you can check that like there's no weird shell script that's been added, or whatever the case may be, right? And you add that, an owner then adds that flag okay to test, and then only then do the images get built and the actual CI/CD run.
That would be definitely an option and a possible way to contemplate those contribution that comes from outside, in a sense.
Yeah, so maybe it's worth taking a note of that and just maybe having a look at what the Kubernetes community do with that. There may be some bot that they already have, or some workflow that they already have that we can just reuse.
On the other hand, just to mention that I point a bullet point that says that that we have like many images in key.io. So
sure.
We probably would need to reconsider what we are actually uploading to key.io and when as well, because at the moment it's a bit of polluted, and probably it's not what we want to have like published.
Does Key give you an option to trim like all images or something like that?
There are like, I think like Alex just mentioned, I think it was Alex, there's like a way to have like an expiry in the images. I think it's in the Docker file, if I remember correctly.
Right.
And that way they're going to be removed, and probably like normal images that not releases and not floating tags like latest, for example, they're going to be just deleted from key.io. But I don't know if there's any other sanitation method that we can implement on key.io.
Okay.
I
On the
think
plus side, Red Hat owns key.io, so we can probably get like
it's not a direct
dispensation.
problem. I think Ego is trying to mention something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted, but it's been already covered by Craig's question. So good.
So I think ideally we would allow the images to be built from a PR from a contributor so that we can properly test it through the CI/CD flow. So I would definitely recommend that we look at like some form of approval from an owner that then allows the image to be built. Because I think otherwise, I mean, okay, we don't have like lots of contributors right now, but as soon as we get one, it's going to get real awkward, right? Because it's like, oh, we need to actually like make a direct branch with your changes on it in order to test them. You know, it's going to be a bit odd.
I will make a little counterpoint to that. As far as I know, the testing that's being done on PRs currently does not involve OLM or images at all.
Oh, okay.
And that
Okay.
won't change, right? It's basically that we as QE won't be able to test it.
Okay.
Because we are the only one that require OLM right now, and I don't think we plan on testing PRs in the near future. Definitely not.
Okay.
So
I could see us getting to the point fairly rapidly,
Yeah.
though, that we want those images and want to be able to install it.
I can
not
see
just
too, but I think there are a lot of discussions before that that need to happen for this to be even viable. So I totally agree that Kubernetes Wave sounds great in the future. I just don't. It's great to look at it, to study it. I just don't think it will be implemented soon. Or needs to be done soon.
I don't think we need to sort of do this in like immediately. But I think having a plan, as in how would we do this, right, is not a bad thing
Yeah,
to think of. Yeah.
I agree.
It is also a good thing just to limit the traffic and the push to key. If we have like kind of like a tag that only administrators can assign in terms of what is actually pushed to key and what not.
Mhm.
Probably that would be actually good for the current pipeline and for the future contributions as well, if we have.
Jason just linked there to the OK to test command, so that might be useful. As I said, I don't think it's like urgent or anything, but I think going like I say if we kind of go with it with something like what Kubernetes is doing, then it's going to be very familiar as well to most people in the Kubernetes community that are probably the people that are going to end up contributing to us. Anything else on that one, Stevie?
No,
Okay.
that would be it. Thanks.
Do you, I suppose my final question on it then would be, do you anticipate any problem with the number of images that we're building? Like, are you expecting that Key's going to come along and go, hey, you're building too many images? I don't know. I've never looked to see what limits they have or anything like that. So
I think beyond that, there's a point that I think I raised a while back in this call already. Like that's when we look at the expiry, it also looks bad because all your images there, with or without limit, one, it's a mess. Two, they'll all be red because of CVEs.
Yeah.
So
It's actually
so I think whether we have a limit or not, I think it is desirable for us to say keep that space tidy or have a dumping space, right? Like as we said, like release channels or whatever, where like, you know, that's not the real release and then the dev channel or whatever. But otherwise, I think it just looks bad.
That's interesting. Although when I go and look at the Red Hat registry, there are old images there that are.
Okay,
I agree.
Tough
But I
luck
agree.
for them.
But I agree. So we want to keep key tidy to avoid well, a mess, and also grid. I guess we need an issue for this, really, like so that because like we're not going to probably act on it in like right now. So if we just talk about it here, it's going to disappear into the aether, and then we're going to talk about it in 3 months again, right? So let's also add. Look, using the OK to test.
Sorry, I think you are adding those comments in the wrong section.
Oh, thanks, Saguski.
Kevin will be mad.
DD, do you mind creating some issues for those?
Will do.
Okay. We should also last thing on this. Whatever we do there should also be on like all of our repos, right? Not just the service protection. Kevin, you're next.
Yeah, sure. Probably a small one from myself. So I guess we'll just ask for people's thoughts on kind of moving to controller runtime 0.15 on the kind of Go-based projects. I guess the background to this is that on the Kuadrant operator, there's an issue for us to move to the gateway API machinery repo. And that one requires one is Go 1.20, which is all right. And the second one is to upgrade the controller runtime. I guess it's to note that 0.15 has some breaking changes. So if Kuadrant operator uses 0.15, then I assume the multi-gateway controller would probably be forced to upgrade if it pulls in like the latest Kuadrant operator dependency. So I guess it's more of a discussion on if people is all right dealing with that, and if there's any thoughts on like why not to do it.
Have you looked at what's involved in moving, Kevin, at all?
I've seen some. I don't think it'd be that big of a change. I guess one of the main ones is like, I think there's this like controller config that it used to be provided for like configuring kind of like the webhook ports and stuff via like a config map kind of thing that's deprecated and will be like removed in 0.16, which has even more breaking changes. Otherwise, I think it's more of there will be code changes if we upgrade to 0.15. I guess one other thing to note is that I think the gateway API kind of like master is using 0.15.1 already, so their next release version would probably kind of force us to upgrade anyway.
Okay. So my thoughts here at least are not before MVP, but we can probably look to do that as part of maintenance and improvements. It sounds like a reasonable thing to do, but I don't see like it breaking anything right now if we stuck with it where we're at. But that's my 2 cents. Anybody else got a different opinion? Okay, Kevin, that seem reasonable to you, that we do move to it, but that we wait just a little while longer?
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, yeah.
Okay.
I would bring. I don't agree with you, Craig. I would just not wait too long for the projects to move to the API machinery. Otherwise, it becomes hard for us, to deal with common issues such as how we map events to policies and trigger reconciliation, this kind of stuff, right? The kind of thing that we are currently doing by relying on the annotations, right? All of that currently it's copied in both repos, and we are trying to bring an enhanced version of it to the gateway API machinery with an obvious step following of the repos start importing that project.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for moving as timely as possible, really. Same with like the versions of Go and things like that. Yeah, Kevin, I've just assigned you an issue there just to set up the GitHub issue so we don't forget about those in the backlog refinements. Okay, just from me, there's a pull request on the architecture repo for an architectural overview. So feel free to take a look at that and give any feedback or comments that you want. We got 7 minutes. Dave Martin, last one. We got through them all. It's amazing.
Hey, I'll get the screen sharing here. Do a bit of a demo. Just talk a little bit about this thing.
Sorry, Dave, say that again. I lost you.
Is my audio okay? Can you hear me?
I felt like either I dropped out or you dropped out. I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll go slowly just in case. I have had some issues earlier in the call, but it seems to be okay now. Yeah, I'm just trying to find the share button. Do you mind if I take over your screen, Greg?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So this is a small project I was working on over the last, say, a couple of weeks on and off. So this is metrics for Gateway API resources. The project is in the Kuadrant org right now. I initially had it in my own account, but I've moved it over there as of this morning. So it's called Gateway API State Metrics. For anyone familiar with kube state metrics, it's like that, but for Gateway API resources. So it allows you to expose metrics about these resources in Prometheus format and then scrape them in to use them as dashboards or alerts. So there's a couple of examples in here, how to use it, how to install it alongside Prometheus, that kind of thing. There's example dashboards in here. I'll show them as well. There's a couple of example alert rules in here as well, using the Prometheus rule resource. So I should have still running here locally. So I'll focus on Grafana, make this demo a bit more visual. So there's 3 dashboards that work with these new metrics out of the box. So they're focused on the 3 main Gateway API resources. So the first one is Gateway classes. Let's jump in here. So we'll look at Tanis. We'll look at the overall view. So I have example multi-cluster gateway and a couple of gateways down in 2 clusters, and there's a single HTTP route as well. So this is the gateway class view. It's showing that there's 3 different gateway classes at play here. There's 2 different istios. That's because we're looking at info from 2 different clusters. So that's to explain why there's 2 istios. But we have a view of the gateway classes here when they were created. Over here, we have any gateway instances and what, say, class they're an instance of. And we have the name of them here. They're all named the same, but that's just the sample data I've used. From here, we have a couple of options. We can click up top here at these other dashboards to get the gateway view, or to get the HTTP route view, or you can click on the gateway itself to drill down to that specific gateway. So if I click on the first one here, for example, it's setting this drop down up here to be filtered to that specific one, or can go back to all, that kind of thing. I don't think it's updating at the moment because we need to switch to Tanis, but yeah, let's gloss over that. So in here on the gateway view, you have all the gateways when they were created. You have the listeners, what listeners are defined in each of these gateways, what host name, protocol, etc. Anything that you'd see in the listener block of the gateway spec. You also have any addresses that are set in the gateway status, so you can see what IP addresses are coming back here. Or in the case of our multi-cluster gateway, we have these different address types here that we kind of abstract the multi-cluster gateways addresses with. There's the attached routes, and then we have HTTP routes that have a target parent reference to these gateways as well. So like the like going from classes to gateway instances, with that drill down link, we can also drill down to specific HTTP route here. We only have one, but you get the idea. It filters that specific one where you can go back to all. But because we only have one, we'll only see that one. So here we have all the HTTP routes. We have the targeted parent references, and then we have the attached parent references. So the difference there is in your spec of your HTTP route, you may specify what parents you want to reference. But in the status of the HTTP route, it says what you're actually attached to. So we just have the two sides of that relationship. And like I said, you can just jump between the different dashboards up here, all three of them. To give you an idea of the raw metrics that are actually exposed by this project, you can see in the README what they actually look like. So if we scroll down here past the first few pieces of information, we have the information on the actual metrics. So the gateway metrics, all the different ones that come back for that. The gateway class metrics, down here we have HTTP route metrics. So these are generic for the gateway API resources. They won't tell you like requests per second, that kind of thing. That's up to the gateway provider and what metrics that might provide. So last thing, the dashboards, I've uploaded them to grafana.com there this morning. So we'll see them show up here as well, 3 different ones, and it links off to the project as well. So yeah, that's it. We're just at the top of the hour, but if anyone has any questions on that afterwards, just shout in the Slack channel and I can leave it there.
Okay, that's time up. Thanks very much for the demo, Dave. Looked great. And yeah, let's leave it there. Continue the conversation in Slack if you want to. Talk to you soon.